Hey guys, subscribe for daily content, and if you're shopping for gear, make sure you check out the description for the newest items at some of the very best online retailers. There's also links for some of the items that I personally recommend. Thanks!
What's going on YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got a really interesting knife review / knife overview to share with you guys. This is the WE Knives and Peter Carey Nitro OG. When I talk about WE Knives, every now and then I refer to something called the WE Knives secret sauce, which previously, on previous reviews has been exclusive to like the cybernetic model and the GTC solid, or the GTC collab that was the solid made by WE Knives. Those two knives seem to be built differently with WE's magic ingredients. WE Knives have always been good, but those two knives in particular, and I assume probably some other models I haven't handled, are definitely built with a little bit of extra sauce on those guys, and it is noticeable. Not just in terms of the action and execution, all that, but the finish work. It's all just extra. This knife appears to be made with that same extra special sauce. It's probably an evolution or a change up in their manufacturing process, and I would venture to guess that we're going to see this much more often. In fact, probably eventually across the board with their stuff. This is really cool. This is kind of going to be a little bit of a hidden gem because there's no way to know. Looking at the listing, it legitimately just looks like a slightly overpriced WE knife, but handling it is a much different experience. This is really, really good. This is the larger version, by the way. There's also like a mini Nitro, so I'll have specific links to the larger guy here down in the description. I have no idea if this mini is made the same way. Thank you so much to WE Knives for supplying this knife for review. Thanks to my patrons for supporting me. Please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex, and at least for the time being on TikTok at _metal_complex. Let's get some specs out of the way, and then I'm going to talk about everything when it comes to this knife, all the little teeny tiny details that are really, really impressive. The overall length, this is not a small knife. The larger version of it isn't. It's about 8.75 inches with a blade length of 3.75. Cutting edge is a little bit over 3.5 inches. How about some size comparisons? Any custom scales you find in this section can be found down in the description under Original Goat and others. Sincerely, if you've never checked out Original Goat, they probably have some super awesome USA-made custom scales for one of your favorite knives, so it's worth checking out. Up against the 8010 and the 8020.5, you can see here, this is a large knife. It's not a massively XL knife, but it is definitely longer than knives like the 8010. Putting it up against the Spyderco PM2 and the Spyderco Para 3. Once again, quite a bit larger than both. And then finally up against the Benchmade Group Tillion, or in this case, the Ritter Hogue and the Hogue Deca. How is the action on this knife? That is definitely one of the key indicators to me. Number one, access to that lock bar is not only substantial, but it's really nice to look at. Like between the really, really nice finish work that we've got here, it's sort of like a polished media blasting. I don't know if it's like a glass blasting or what, but I've seen it before on WE Knives. Sometimes they do it to the blade too, which I really wish they had done it here. But this is similar to the finish that's on the WE GTC solid. Really nice with that contrast there and that little texturing, that little sort of chamfered edge right there. It just makes access to the lock bar beautiful. The blade readily falls and catches your thumb right there on that flipper tab, and then the action is so stupidly controlled. Man, that is a huge, huge difference. There's such a big difference between this and what I generally expect from WE, right? Generally what I expect from WE, and I know those of you who have bought lots of WE knives over the last few years, you know they feel a little tight out of the box, and sometimes eventually they achieve nearly fall shut action or fall shut action. Not that you have to achieve that area of action in order for the knife to be considered good, but usually it just feels like tightness, right? Not anything that was like specifically tuned or that was the end result of some, very involved manufacturing process. It just feels like, yeah, it's some bearings and two pieces of material and a blade between them, and then eventually it'll kind of wear itself in. This feels completely different. I'm not sure, if I had my eyes closed and if I had my eyes closed and there's no branding on the knife, well, it wouldn't matter if my eyes were closed. I'm not sure that I'd be able to tell with my eyes closed that this was a WE knife. I'm not sure that it would even be a guess. The flipping action, the detent, just the feeling of the materials all the way around, this feels quite a bit different. It's a departure in many ways to what I expect from WE knives. The thumb studs, by the way, are really good. I mean, a lot of this is, you know, it's ode to Peter Carey. It's the design itself is a Peter Carey design, but WE's execution of this is just phenomenal. It is so good. The flipper tab and the shape of it, the jimping on there, it's such a satisfying flip, and I just cannot get over how beautifully smooth the action is. It's not just like, oh yeah, it's guillotine falls shut, loosey-goosey. No, it feels properly tuned, and it feels consistent throughout. You can see here just slight adjustment of, you know, the angle of the knife and where my hands are. The end result is just really, really satisfying. And that's what it comes down to, you know, on a flipper on a flipper knife or whatever type of knife you have. When you're deploying a knife, you want it to feel satisfying. Not like it was just, you know, we got the detent in there and we got a blade and we got the materials. I sure hope it deploys the way people like it. Now, this feels very purposeful and intentional, right? It's incredibly satisfying and it deploys exactly the way that you'd want it to. Breaking the detent feels good. The clack of the blade into the open position feels like you know, that full transfer of power from the flipper tab through the detent and into the open position. It just feels really, really good. Let's go ahead and do carry profile. Thickness up against the Spyderco Para 3. This isn't a horrifically thick knife. In fact, it's about the same as the Para 3, but it's also contoured. Length and height up against the PM2 and the Para 3. This knife is definitely going to be on the larger side. It's not massive, but it's going to be on the larger side for a lot of people. It's definitely a little bit longer than the Para 3 and quite tall when you include both the very top of the blade and the flipper tab and the distance between those two spaces. Definitely longer and almost as tall, if not exactly as tall as the Para 3 as well. What are the materials? There's a few different options you can go with. This is the base version of this knife. Looks just like this, but no blue accents. And instead of this aluminum carbon fiber, it's just basic marble carbon fiber, but I think that's perfectly fine, right? Those are not really extra value elements. That's more of an aesthetic preference. So the base version of this knife is just silver and black, which honestly is probably the best way to go anyway. In this particular knife's case, what we have here, and I think it's probably just going to be printed incredibly small. Can we see it? You know what? Let's use the zoom feature on this and see if we can get up super duper close, and then all together we can look for that magical, there it is, CPM 20 CV. I do appreciate, sorry, I have a new screen protector on this phone and you have to really get at it in order to get it to zoom. But CPM 20 CV is not, just remind people, new people or just people who are unaware, that's not Chinese 20 CV, that's not a thing. It's Crucible 20 CV, it comes from Crucible, and then WE does their own heat treat, which has always been lackluster in my opinion, coming in at 59 to 61 for uncoated blades, and a very disappointing 58 to 60 for coated blades. So it is authentic CPM 20 CV that is actually made in the United States, even though the entirety of the knife, you know, outside of where the steel is made, is actually manufactured in China. They literally order the steel from Crucible and then do their own heat treat and make it into a blade in China. A lot of people are unaware of that, so I'm just making sure that people know. So now, geometry obviously plays a bigger role in terms of blade performance than the heat treat, but the heat treat is still important. And my opinion is that CPM 20 CV / M390 / 204P should be a bit higher, about 60 to 62, whether the blades are coated or uncoated. I understand coating a blade, right, doing a PVD or DLC brings the whole point range down one. I think their process should just be adjusted so that none of their blades fall below 60. That's just my opinion. But if you're going to pick up a WE knife in M390 or 20 CV or whatever, my suggestion is going with an uncoated blade because that's your best range. And honestly, if you get one that lands between 60 or 61, you're good to go because that's a great number for 20 CV. But anyways, 20 CV, and we have titanium, and we have various carbon fibers, plain carbon fiber, aluminum. In this case, it's like an aluminum carbon fiber mascus, right? They've got a couple of other ones, but that's what we're looking at for materials. Titanium backspacer, titanium clip. Let's go ahead and weigh it. The weight on the OG Nitro is coming in at about 4.9 ounces. Not really terrible. Less than I thought it would be. Still not perfect ratios, but the balance on the knife is right behind the pivot, right in that primary position where it's going to be. So honestly, the knife feels pretty darn good even at 5 ounces, but will still obviously be too heavy for some people to carry. Let's go ahead and get a do a hardware check on this knife. I'm going to get out my tools. As per usual, my tools are very inexpensive and very recommendable. You can find them right down in the section of my description that talks about the tools I use in this channel. I believe, much like other WE knives, everything's going to be T8 except for the pocket clip. Actually, you know what? No, even the pocket clip screws are T8. We're still going to have some screws underneath here, which could be T6. That's for the backspacer. Not really that big of a deal. As long as you have the right tools for the job, you should be good to go. This knife is not going to be difficult to disassemble. We'll go ahead and measure blade stock thickness. I'm going to guess that this guy's going to come in at about 135 or so. That's what it looks like to me. Maybe 125. Let's see. Yeah, okay, so it's about 123. Well, it's probably 125. My calipers are just off, but not a horribly thick blade. All right, let's move on into the meat and potatoes. Very unassuming, straightforward profile. It is not gonna, this is a Peter Carey design, but the design itself is not far out. In fact, it's hardly unique in any way. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. These are traditional knife lines. The reason it's designed this way is because it works. The handle shape, the blade shape, all of that works. So this is gonna be an excellent tool. The benefit to picking this knife up is it's a WE knife that has been really beautifully executed. I like the materials. I like the look. Like, it's very classic, right? I love the hand rub satin finish on the blade. That's a nice touch because WE really likes to kind of cheap out a lot and just do a belt satin finish. And listen, if a belt satin or a machine satin finish is your preference, that's fine, but that's a really, really cheap finish, right? Same way with like a basic acidy tumbling. That's also a cheap finish. I like it when companies do something a little bit different, right? And then offer a lot of different options for people who might prefer the less expensive or the more expensive, right? It seems like WE has, in this case, hand rub satin, which is nice, right? It looks really good, and it definitely looks a little bit flashier than just like a standard finish. And it definitely also is a more expensive finish to apply. Probably not much, but a little bit. But it's just this and like some weird two-tone. That black wash finish is just really boring. That's also like an incredibly inexpensive and very underwhelming finish. It just doesn't look very good. It's fine that they offer it because there's always going to be a few people who like it, but WE knives, I can tell you, what people really want to see at that price point is that glass blasting you guys do. That is absolutely beautiful. People love that. People like a high polished stone wash finish. Not everybody. People are going to point out, well, I don't like it. Well, that's fine. What I'm saying is everybody has different preferences, but when it comes to these higher tiers, the vast majority of people who are interested in a lot of this stuff want those things that are different, want those things that set these knives apart from other things in the general competition zone, right? So WE knives, you're glass blasting what you guys did on the GTC and on the Cybertrix or whatever that thing was called, the Cybernetic. Mix that up with Reich's one. Man, that's beautiful, and you don't see that very often, right? So do that stuff, but when you guys offer like black wash, boy, I'm pretty sure Kershaw offers that finish on $40 knives. Like, that is just not super attractive. And it also brings your range down a whole point. 58 to 60. Wow. So you mean I can get a basic finish and I can have the total performance of the blade reduced? Wow. It's just like, I don't know. I don't speak for everybody, but I just would be very, very surprised to hear that there are hordes of people beating down doors for that plain black washed finish, right? You know, okay, if you like that, that's fine. I think the answer is not to get rid of it. The answer is to expand and offer different finishes, which can be complicated even for a company like WE, who has, they can obviously operate on volume and make tons of different versions of knives. It's probably still a little bit tricky to make so many different versions of you know, all these knives. But yeah, that silver bead blast, high reflectivity tumbled finish, right? This hand satin finish. Those are really, really nice. That's what people generally, I think, like to see in some of these upper tier knives. So I do appreciate that. Whatever is on the titanium here is very, very similar to what I am talking about. That is a stunning finish and definitely different from what we normally see. Look how nice that looks all the way around. It's even almost got a little bit of like an eggshell on it. That looks really nice, especially in contrast with the blue WE logo pivot, the blue hardware here, and this aluminum. Almost looks like a topographical map. It's really just like a carbon fiber and aluminum Damascus, right? Not really. You can't say that word. I found out here lately that a lot of the new people from from YouTube Shorts, it's some sort of common trait. It's sort of like a hive mind trait. They all love to assume that nobody anywhere knows anything, and it's something that they probably just learned about, that they need to go and immediately teach somebody. So they come from YouTube Shorts, jump into a community, and immediately just start saying things that people already know. Thank you very much. Most of us are aware of what Wootz Damascus is, and the fact that true Damascus is probably, like, the ingredients are probably lost to time, and that modern pattern weld Damascus is technically different from Wootz Damascus. We know about that. You're just now discovering our community. You're not teaching us here, but thank you very much for making sure that we know that. Every time I say Damascus, every time I say that now, I went for a long time not having to talk about that, but now with all the new people, every time I say Damascus, people are like, actually, it's not Damascus. True Damascus was lost to time and is referred to as Wootz. But yeah, I do like these little elements. Something that is kind of a benefit to picking up one of these versions that's a little bit more decorated than the standard versions is you get these little accents, right? These little bowls in the pocket. Well, it's nice. We don't always see stuff like this where they've got little spots where they've anodized. It's not anything incredible, but it's just they're going out of the way to do something a little bit different. I also like the backspacer. Nothing super special going on here, but it does look nice, right? The blade has a beautiful cutting geometry and gets nice and thin up here. Flat that carries out maybe 60% the length of the blade. There's a swedge up here. There's a nice tip, right? I mean, it's a very straightforward, standard EDC blade that's been, you know, time tested and proven to be good, generally speaking, for knife tasks. Not screwing tasks or hammering tasks or prying tasks, but tasks that would require a sharp blade, both in terms of the cutting edge and point. Yeah, the drop point blade is going to do it for you. The thumb stud is slightly in the cutting path. Not that big of a deal, since most of the time we are going to be cutting a little bit of an angle. There is a bit of a choke up position, kind of a single knuckle choke up position right up here, and that does work just fine. I wouldn't go much more than that. Meat of your finger is going to slide up on the cutting edge. Yeah, I think the blade is really fantastic, and I love the accents there. A little bit of a lanyard hole back here. That's fine for people who like lanyards. Pocket clip is right hand tip up only. No lefty mounting position. Sorry, lefties. Pocket clip is a bit long. Really doesn't need to be that long. Truthfully, though, I mean, the ergonomics on this knife are really beautiful. The edges are nicely chamfered. There's contouring. Fills the hand nicely without being super thick. Pocket clip, I can feel it. It's not incredibly prominent, but I can still feel it. I just wish it wasn't quite as long, but it's not really causing that much of a problem. It's even more comfortable in the choked up position, honestly. So there you go. Carry depth, about right here. A little bit sticking up out of the pocket. There's a little ramp underneath the pocket clip, a nice smooth contoured surface underneath the clip, so in and out of the pocket won't be that big of a problem. Steel lock bar insert that doubles as the over travel stop. There's a traditionally placed stop pin, a little bit of shouldering, no blade play up, down, left to right, runs on bearings. You probably knew that. No lock stick, no double clutch, no pivot lash. Incredibly smooth and consistent in here, and a very clicky, satisfying detent with a perfectly centered blade and no detent lash. Excuse me. Allergies. Awesome. What's the base price of this knife? $314. Now, normally I really criticize WE Knives for getting up over that $300 mark and not offering anything that I don't, that I can't find from other companies. There was a long period of time where WE Knives would be at like $300 or $315 and essentially offering an identical product to newer companies who are making, their knives were in the $200 territory. Now, you could say carbon fiber, titanium, and 20 CV is something that I can still find for $200. Yeah, you can, but clearly those are not the only elements that I'm talking about. It's the execution of the materials. This doesn't always matter to a lot of people. For a lot of people, it's just the materials alone, and they don't care about the finishes, they don't care about the action or the tuning, they don't care about any of that. They just want the materials. If that's all you want, I've got like 800 Amazon brands that you will just love taking a look. But for people looking for something a little bit different, for something that's more deserving of a price tag at $300 or up, there's still a lot out there. But this is one of those where I think we did a really, really good job on. The Peter Carey design is really good. Great for EDC. On the larger side, right? If you don't like this, you can go with the smaller one. But this extra magic sauce that WE seems to be periodically applying to their knives is very present here, and I really, really like it. It feels like a knife that is different from the more common stuff, right around that $250 mark, right? That's no longer much of a magical realm, right? Things are getting more expensive, and this knife market is getting flooded with companies just essentially trying to cash in on this, collector enthusiast community, right? And there's a lot of people who still sort of just celebrate the materials by themselves. And that's fine, but to me, the stuff that stands out is not just the stuff that's made, because the materials aren't really special. It's what the company does with the materials, the final form of the product that makes it special. And this knife stands out to me, somebody who handles, I don't even know how many knives I've handled. I mean, truth, I have 4,200 uploads. I've handled a lot of knives, right? So I'm getting progressively more picky, and it's substantially harder to impress. I'm not saying that my opinion matters more than anybody else. I'm just saying factually, it's just harder and harder and harder to, for something to really stand out to me. But this does. This is cool. And if this is an indication where WE is going, then I think it's welcome. It doesn't feel perfect. It doesn't feel like, oh my gosh, what an amazing deal. But it definitely feels more special than a lot of the other stuff that I've been experiencing that's made from the same materials here lately. So base price of this knife, and that's the standard version without the blue accents, without the aluminum. Again, those are just embellishments that don't really add much value to it. So the plain marble carbon fiber, this beautiful sort of glass blasted titanium or whatever they're doing here, and then the hand rub satin finish blade, $314. I'm not super upset about that. Again, it doesn't, Hadouken me in the face with wowment and excite, but it is definitely impressive, and I do like this one way more than I ever thought I would just by looking at the picture. So, to people looking for a super economic, straightforward EDC cutting tool, do I recommend this to you? No, obviously not. There's tons of stuff out there that fits that bill. But to people looking for something that's worthy of that 300 plus price tag, yeah, I think this is, if you like how this looks, you're going to be really impressed with the build quality on it. It is very, very nice. That's going to be pretty much it today, guys. Thanks so much to WE for sending this in. I will link this knife down in the description so that you guys can check it out if you want. Please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex and on TikTok at _metal_complex. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe, because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.